And if Pride and Prejudice is ultimately a morality tale, then the Lizzie Bennet Diaries has the morals I like best. Once upon a time, Hank Green, who I knew from being a vlogbrother, and Bernie Sue, who I didn't know at all, decided to get together and adapt one of their favourite books, Pride and Prejudice. A little bit differently to how other people have done it. And so the Lizzie Bennet Diaries was born. The conceit is that Lizzie Bennet is a 24-year-old American grad student who is making these videos as part of her final master's project, dissertation, or something. And so everything in her life is documented vlog style in front of this single camera wherever it is that she happens to be parked at the moment. If you haven't watched the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, I really recommend them. At least go watch the first half dozen episodes to see how you like them. Go on, won't take very long, no more than half an hour. If you decide to watch the entire thing, that's more like 4 or 5 hours. But go try it. Sure. Yeah, because from here on out it's spoilers, y'all. I wouldn't do that to you. No, I wouldn't. Not even if you've read Pride and Prejudice before. Although, come to think of it, if you haven't read or seen any other adaptations of Pride and Prejudice, then you haven't watched the last 2 episodes, right? Right. Okay, in case you haven't seen it in a while, the plot, it goeth thusly. Lizzie Bennet and Charlotte Lou are final year master's students in communications and best friends, and the plot revolves around Lizzie and her family and her friends basically getting their lives together. There's Darcy, bless him, look at him, heir to multimedia mega corporation Pemberley Digital. There's Bing Lee, oh look at him. Look, he's so cute! Who's a medical student, and his sister Caroline. There are Lizzie's sisters Jane and Lydia. There are lots of other characters either featured or mentioned, and there's also, which is very important for this adaptation, Lizzie's incredible, if a little bit subjective, recall of events.
That's exactly what I said. How do you remember these things?
I forget nothing.
And this is important because about half of the story is told second-hand. Yeah, anyway, Darcy and Lizzie fall in love, Jane and Bing do likewise, there is a thing with Lydia and Wickham, and everybody, you know, tries to figure out what they're going to do in their life and their career, and they have money issues and all of this other stuff. The characters that you mainly see are Lizzie, Jane, Lydia and Charlotte. You see a couple of other characters make semi-regular appearances in Lizzie's videos, in Lydia's videos, in Maria Lou's videos, but for the most part you stick with these 4. Lizzie is brilliant. There is no other word for it. She is pitched just beautifully. She is flawed in ways in which original canon Lizzie isn't, but which work really well within the setting. You're on Lizzie's side most of the time. She's bright and funny and too pushy with her little sister Lydia, and very afraid of being alone and being stuck. And that loneliness, that sense of isolation that everyone else is moving on with their lives and she isn't really present in original Pride and Prejudice Lizzie, but as an addition I really like it. Her relationship with her sister is as difficult as it is in Pride and Prejudice, with her trying but failing to understand what makes her sister tick. Lizzie and Ashley Clemens holds the series together, word perfect recall and biased opinions and all. And it is, and I mean this in the very best sense, a United States grad school alternate universe of Pride and Prejudice. And it works. And so not everyone is whiter than a mayonnaise sandwich, and Fitz is gay, which means you can get around the whole second son can't afford to have a wife without, you know, introducing an extra ship there. The big update that they make in terms of the plot is that not everything revolves around romantic relationships, because in the upper classes in Regency England, basically, if you're a woman, you don't have a lot of power anyway, everything revolves around who you're marrying or not marrying or whatever. But Lizzie and Charlotte's main conflict, for example, isn't over a man, per se. It's over a job. Mr. Ricky Collins comes over and offers Lizzie a very well remunerated job working for him at Collins & Collins. She turns him down flat in a parallel to the original proposal scene, which is awkward and hilarious and extremely frustrating if you're Lizzie. The next video has Charlotte bringing Ricky back for another video and basically manipulating him into offering her the same job, which she then takes. It's probably not that hard, he's not the brightest, is Ricky. The job much like the marriage proposal, would have secured Lizzie safety. It would have given her a salary and benefits and the ability to pay off her mountain of student loans, and yet it would have made her miserable, and so she turns it down. Charlotte, on the other hand, is in a lot more debt and doesn't mind taking a job which Lizzie would consider soul-sucking. And it turns out that Charlotte is really good at it. Of course, because Charlotte is awesome. But Lizzie is horrified. She is so shocked that Charlotte would sell out like this, would leave before she even finished her master's degree, would abandon her. And you feel for her, and the episode where they fight about it is heartbreaking, but she's wrong. She's wrong about Lydia, and she is wrong about Charlotte, and eventually she learns the error of her ways about both of them. She goes to visit Charlotte at Collins & Collins, where we see Darcy for the very first time, and they make up because Lizzie is wrong in the original to try and dictate Charlotte's choice of who she's going to marry. Charlotte is very well aware of how stupid Mr. Collins is, and she's wrong in this adaptation to try and dictate which jobs she takes. And as an aside, Charlotte Lou's hard-headed pragmatism is just the most perfect thing. I'm going to overuse the word perfect in this review, probably. Rapturous, superb, wonderful. It's very true to the original Charlotte, who is nothing if not a hard-headed pragmatist. And then you've got Jane, and Jane I like even better than original Jane, because she gets, for the first time, a character arc. The original novel is about Lizzie and Darcy and their character arcs and their growth, and so there isn't really much in the way of growth for anyone else. In the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, though, they cut out a lot of the original novel, like they cut out the extraneous sister of Caroline, for example, and it works very well because it means they can spend more time on the characters that you do see. And so Lizzie gets a character arc, and Jane gets a character arc, and so does Lydia. And so does Charlotte. Sort of. Or at least she gets a resolution to her problems, which is kind of the same. At the beginning of the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, Jane is as sweet and naive and lovely and put upon and underpaid as you would expect a modern-day Jane Bennet to be. By the end, though, she is putting her foot down and making decisions and doing what is best for her career, and she is quite cross when Bing comes over when she's about to move to New York because she thinks he's going to say, "No, don't go, stay with me and be in a relationship." And she's like, "Nope." As it turns out, that wasn't what he was going to say at all. He just wants to go with her, and it's adorable. But you go, Jane. The last big arc I want to talk about is the one which is the biggest change to the source material, and one of my favourite things about the adaptation. So I first watched the miniseries of Pride and Prejudice when I was 9 years old, and I didn't really have a lot of sympathy for Lydia. Pride and Prejudice, while a slightly subversive one, is kind of a morality tale, and at the end of Pride and Prejudice, Lydia has changed not one jot. Wickham changes very little too, but he does actually get punished for his terrible actions. He has to go to Newcastle, in the north of England. So for him, what goes around comes around, because basically his punishment is Newcastle and Lydia. Like I said, I didn't really like Lydia my first trip through Pride and Prejudice. She doesn't have the brains that God gave a common sparrow, she is horrible to her sisters, and she is willfully stupid on occasion, which is a personality trait that I can't stand. But that was me being a bit of a judgmental cow, to be honest, which you are sometimes at 9, because Lydia's not bad, she's not evil, she's just a bit stupid, and she's very, very much taken advantage of. Because basically what happens to Lydia is she goes off and decides to have a real gay old time in the original sense of the word, and she is manipulated by a man about twice her age into running off and having sex with him. He is 30-something, and ew. Like, ugh. The updated Lydia is a party girl who gets underage drunk a lot and has lots of unsafe, possibly, sex with random dudes, and Lizzie is not particularly happy about it. Why, though? Why is Lydia a drunken party animal? Why is the wild one the identity that she has decided that she is going to adopt? Well, because Lydia can't compete She can't compete with Jane, the pretty one, and Lizzie, the smart one. Party of two, as close as two sisters can be. Where does that leave you as the sort of trailing younger sister? What do you do with that? You act out because you're not self-confident enough to believe in your own worth. And so when Lizzie's well-meaning but painful attempts to get Lydia to be more responsible backfire, to whose arms does she run? To George Wickham's, because he says that he gets her, and he sympathises, and that her sisters don't understand her, and they don't love her, and they don't know her like he does. And it's painful to watch. It's very painful to watch. He probably had one of the most difficult acting jobs in the series, and he nailed it as a charming, narcissistic, emotional abuser. It's a masterful job. Because you watch in horror as Lydia, chirpy, sparky Lydia, has all of the life and joie de vivre just sucked out of her by this horrendous relationship, until she has no self-confidence left. Which makes the sex tape scandal, which was what I guessed. I was like, well, they're obviously not going to have her run off. But it's a sex tape. It makes that resolution even more heartbreaking than it is in Pride and Prejudice. Because you now know Lydia, you have seen her in some of her own videos, and in Lizzie's videos, you have seen her struggle, and you have seen her be manipulated, and it's just awful. And even when Darcy fixes everything with, money and stuff, the emotional damage remains. And so it's a much tougher thing for Lizzie and for Lydia, because they discover that they are two sisters who really don't know each other at all. And both of them are forced to grow because of it. Lydia's not a bad person. She's just a trusting young woman who is manipulated by a practiced liar. And her whole life is nearly ruined because of it. Only two more things. The setup for these episodes matters almost as much as the scripting itself. Normally, when they're having sort of normal plot-related episodes and Lizzie is telling us about what's been happening and we're having costume theatre, you have a lot of jump cuts. When the real emotional drama is happening, then everything goes to just one long continuous take. And that's when you know it's gotten real. And it feels real. It feels like you have been invited into the lives of these characters, and that is one of the great things about the vlog style. You develop a very intimate connection with the person on the other side of the camera because you feel like they're looking directly at you all the time while they're delivering this news about, their life or their family or their relationships or whatever. I love Pride and Prejudice. I love the characters, I love the Regency setting, I love the witty banter, but if I were starting over and had never seen any of them or read the book or anything, I think I would sit 9-year-old me down with the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, because if Pride and Prejudice is ultimately a morality tale, then those are the morals I would want her to have.